This story is titled, My Wife Cheated with Her Ex on Our Wedding Day, Thinking I Never Know. Now she's alone at the altar as I walked out. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, big news, I've launched a new Reddit channel. This time the background isn't Minecraft. It's Subway Surfers in a Christmas theme to match the season. Check it out, subscribe, and join the fun. Links in the description. See you there. Now let's start the video. Alright, so here's the deal. I'm Ryan, 30 years old, living in San Diego, and for the longest time I thought I had everything figured out. I was getting married to Sabrina, my girlfriend of 3 years, and honestly, life seemed pretty damn good. She was gorgeous, super outgoing, and could light up a room when she walked in. Everyone who met her would say things like, "Man, you're lucky," and I believed them. I mean, who wouldn't? On paper, she seemed perfect. We planned this big wedding. Like, I'm talking all out. Beachfront venue, fancy catering, a live band, you name it, we had it. It wasn't cheap, but I thought it was worth it. You only get married once, right? Well, at least that's what I thought at the time. But about a week before the wedding, Sabrina started acting different. At first, I brushed it off. Weddings are stressful, you know? Between the guest lists, the decorations, the seating charts. Yeah, it's a lot. But her behavior wasn't just stress. It was something else. She'd suddenly get super secretive with her phone, like always flipping it over when she set it down or stepping out of the room to take calls. I didn't really say anything at first because, honestly, I didn't want to come across as some paranoid fiancé. That's not me. Then one night she was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up and a name popped up. Jason. Now for a second I thought, who the hell is Jason? And then it hit me. It's her ex. Yeah, that Jason. The one she swore was out of her life ages ago. The message wasn't long. It just said, looking forward to tonight. That's it. And I'll admit, my stomach twisted a little. I mean, why was she making plans with her ex a few days before our wedding? But then I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she was helping him out with something. Sabrina's always been the type to help people. So I decided to just ask her. Later that night, when she was out of the shower and we were getting ready for bed, I said, "Hey, so Jason texted you earlier. What's that about?" She didn't even blink. "Oh, Jason? Yeah, he's just going through some stuff. I've been checking in on him. It's no big deal." She said it so casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And maybe it was. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. I didn't push, though. I figured I'd let it go for now. But after that, things started adding up. She'd tell me she was going to meet her maid of honor to go over wedding details, but wouldn't give me much info. She'd get super defensive if I asked too many questions, saying I was stressing her out or making things harder than they needed to be. And I'll admit, I started to wonder if I was overthinking things. Like, was I being that guy? The one who turns every little thing into a big deal? I didn't want to be that guy. Still, the phone thing kept bothering me. It wasn't just Jason. She'd get a ton of texts, and every time she'd immediately hide her phone or act like she didn't hear it. One time, I even joked, "What, you got a secret admirer or something?" She just laughed it off, but the way she avoided eye contact? Yeah, that stuck with me. Then came the night that really kicked things up a notch. Sabrina told me she was meeting her maid of honor, Grace, at a cafe to finalize some wedding stuff. It sounded normal enough, and I didn't think twice about it. I stayed home, watched some TV, and was just about to crash when my best man Eric called. "Yo, Ryan, are you busy?" he asked, sounding kind of hesitant. "No, what's up?" I replied, a little confused. He paused for a second. "Look, man, I don't know if I should say anything, but I'm at Shimon Bar right now, and I just saw Sabrina here." "Okay, and?" I said, not really understanding the problem. "She's not with Grace," Eric said slowly. "She's with some guy. And I'm pretty sure it's Jason." That caught my attention. "Jason? Like, her ex Jason?" "Yeah, man. They're sitting in a booth in the corner. It doesn't look like they're talking about centerpieces, if you know what I mean." For a moment, I didn't even know what to say. Sabrina was out with her ex at a bar when she told me she was meeting her friend? What the hell was going on? Eric must have sensed my silence because he added, "I'm sorry, dude. I thought you should know. I can send you a picture if you want." I told him to send it, and when it came through, my heart dropped. There she was, sitting way too close to Jason, her hand on his arm, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I thanked Eric and hung up. After Eric's call, I couldn't get the image of that photo out of my head. Sabrina and Jason sitting in that booth, way too close, way too comfortable. She wasn't just meeting up with an old friend. It looked intimate, and we both knew it. I stayed up half the night trying to figure out what the hell to do. Part of me wanted to storm down to the bar right then, but I knew that wasn't the move. I needed to see this for what it was and not let my emotions take over. The next day, Sabrina acted like nothing had happened. She was cheerful, humming some song while making coffee in the kitchen, like she wasn't out cozying up to her ex the night before. "Morning, babe," she said with that same bright smile that used to make me melt. Now, it just made me question everything. I played along. "Morning. How was your meeting with Grace?" She didn't even hesitate. "Oh, it was great. We went over some last-minute stuff for the seating chart. She's such a lifesaver, honestly." She sipped her coffee and started scrolling on her phone like it was just another day. It hit me then. She was a damn good liar. The way she spoke, the way she moved, it was all so natural, so confident. If Eric hadn't called me, I would have bought every word. That pissed me off more than anything. I didn't press her right then. I wanted to see how far she'd take the lie. So I asked, "Did you guys stay at the cafe the whole time? Seemed like you were out pretty late." "Oh yeah," she said casually. "We stayed there for a while, and then I dropped her off at her place. It was just a long night." "A long night, huh?" I nodded, biting my tongue to keep from saying something I'd regret. Later that day, I called Eric to get more details. "What else did you see?" "Did they leave together?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Nah, man. They were still there when I left," Eric said. "But they looked real comfortable. Like, if you didn't know she was engaged, you'd think they were together." That stung. I thanked him and hung up, but my head was spinning. I couldn't just let this slide, but I also didn't want to jump the gun. That evening, Sabrina told me she was going out again. Another wedding errand with Grace. This time, I wasn't letting it go. "Cool," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Where are you guys meeting?" "Just at her place," she said quickly, grabbing her purse. Something about the way she answered made me pause. "All right, say hi to her for me." She gave me a quick peck on the cheek and walked out the door. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my keys and called Eric. "I'm going to Shoreline," I told him. "Dude, are you sure? What if she's not even there this time?" "I have to know," I said. I parked a block away from the bar and walked in, trying to keep my cool. The place was crowded, the usual mix of college kids and locals. It took me a minute to spot her, but there she was, back in the same corner booth with Jason. They looked even more comfortable this time. She was leaning toward him, laughing at something he said, her hand resting on his. My stomach turned. This wasn't just some innocent conversation. I didn't confront her right then and there. They were in their own little bubble, completely oblivious to the world around them. It was like I didn't even exist. At one point, Jason leaned in close, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh and lightly shove his shoulder. I clenched my fists under the counter, trying to keep myself in check. I stayed for about 20 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. I left without saying anything, drove home, and sat in my car for what felt like hours. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. We were getting married in a few days. How do you even begin to deal with something like this? By the time Sabrina came home, I'd calmed down enough to play it cool. She walked in, all smiles, and said, "Hey, Grace says hi, by the way." I nodded, barely looking up from my phone. "Oh, cool. Did you guys get everything figured out?" "Yep," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Just a few more things to finalize, and we're good to go." I couldn't believe how easily she lied. She didn't miss a beat. That night, I barely slept again. I kept replaying what I'd seen at the bar, trying to make sense of it. How did she dare cheating on me? The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I called Eric and told him everything. "Dude, you've got to talk to her," he said. "You can't just let this go. If she's doing this now, what's going to happen after you're married?" He was right, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more information, more proof, so I decided to wait and see what she'd do next. Over the next few days, Sabrina kept up the act. She'd smile, laugh, and talk about the wedding like nothing was wrong. But every time her phone buzzed, I felt my blood boil. I knew Jason was still in the picture, and I knew she wasn't being honest with me. By the time the rehearsal dinner rolled around, I was barely holding it together. Sabrina's family was all smiles, talking about how excited they were for the big day. My family, on the other hand, could tell something was off. My mom pulled me aside at one point and asked, "Are you okay? You seem distracted." "I'm fine," I lied, but I wasn't fine. I was furious, and I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. All right, so by this point, I was done sitting around and letting Sabrina play me. I was tired of the fake smiles, the lies, and her acting like everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I could see exactly what was happening. But now it was time for her to see that I wasn't someone she could keep stringing along. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I woke up feeling like today was the day I'd finally say something. I couldn't keep this bottled up anymore. She was still in bed when I got up, scrolling on her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. I stared at her for a moment, wondering if she even felt guilty for sneaking around with her ex. Did she think I wouldn't find out? Or did she just think I'd forgive her no matter what? Either way, she was about to find out she was dead wrong. Hey, I said, my voice steady. We need to talk. She looked up, slightly confused but not alarmed. Sure. What's up? I sat down across from her, keeping my eyes locked on hers. Where were you the other night? And don't tell me you were with Grace because we both know that's not true. Her face froze for a split second before she forced a smile. What do you mean? I told you, I was with Grace working on wedding stuff. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Cut the crap, Sabrina. Eric saw you. With Jason. Her jaw dropped slightly, and I could see the panic start to creep into her expression. Wait, what? That's not true, she stammered. Eric must have been mistaken. Don't lie to me, I said firmly. He wasn't mistaken. He even sent me a photo. You were sitting in a booth with Jason, laughing, touching his arm. So tell me, what the hell is going on? She sat there for a moment, completely silent, as if she was trying to come up with some kind of excuse. Finally, she sighed and said, Okay, fine. Yes, I saw Jason. But it's not what you think. Not what I think, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. You've been sneaking around with your ex, lying to me about where you've been, and spending time at a bar with him instead of working on wedding plans. So tell me, Sabrina, what exactly is it? She started to tear up, which I knew was her go-to move whenever she got caught doing something wrong. Ryan, it's not like that, she said, her voice shaking. Jason reached out to me a while ago. He's been going through a lot, and he just needed someone to talk to. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd overreact. Overreact? I said, my voice rising. You're meeting up with your ex days before our wedding and lying to me about it, and you think I'm overreacting? Her tears started to flow now, and she reached out to grab my hand. Please, Ryan, you have to believe me. I love you. I don't have feelings for Jason. I was just trying to help him. I pulled my hand away, shaking my head. You don't lie to someone you love, Sabrina. And you sure as hell don't sneak around with your ex behind their back. Do you even hear yourself right now? She started to panic, realizing I wasn't buying her bullshit. Ryan, please. It was a mistake, okay? I shouldn't have seen him, but it didn't mean anything. I swear I stood up, unable to sit there and listen to her try to spin this anymore. You don't accidentally meet up with someone multiple times, Sabrina. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. And honestly, it's pretty damn clear where your priorities are. She jumped up too, trying to block me from leaving the room. Wait, please don't walk away. We can fix this. I'll stop talking to him. I'll block his number. Just don't give up on us. I paused, staring at her for a moment. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that maybe this was just some stupid mistake she'd made in a moment of weakness. But the other part of me, the part that had been watching her lie straight to my face for weeks, knew better. How long has this been going on? I asked, my voice quieter now. She hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. A couple of weeks, she finally admitted. But it wasn't anything serious. We just talked, I swear. I let out a bitter laugh. Do you even hear yourself? You're supposed to be marrying me, and you're sneaking around with a guy you used to date, and you think I'm supposed to just believe it's no big deal? It wasn't like that, she insisted, her voice desperate now. I made a mistake, okay? But it's you I want to be with. Please don't let this ruin everything. I shook my head, stepping past her and heading for the door. Sabrina, you already ruined everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. I walked out, slamming the door behind me, and got in my car. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get out of there and clear my head. When I finally pulled over, I called Eric and told him what happened. Dude, she admitted to it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She's been seeing Jason for weeks. Ryan, I'm so sorry, man, Eric said. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I don't know yet. But I can't just let this slide. There's no way I'm marrying her now. Eric was quiet for a moment before he said, Look, whatever you decide, just know I've got your back. You don't deserve this, man. Hearing that meant a lot, but it didn't make the situation any easier. I knew I had some tough decisions to make, and I knew the fallout from this was going to be messy. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Sabrina or Jason make a fool out of me. I spent the rest of that day driving around aimlessly, trying to process everything. Sabrina wasn't just lying to me. She was living a completely different life behind my back. And the worst part? She had the audacity to keep acting like everything was fine. Like we were still the perfect couple everyone thought we were. When I finally got back to the apartment, she wasn't there. Good. The wedding was only 2 days away, and I knew I had to make a decision. Do I go through with it and hope this was just a stupid mistake? Or do I call it off and deal with the fallout? The thing is, calling off a wedding isn't just about you and the other person. It's about the guests, the families, the money you've already spent. It felt like an avalanche waiting to happen. But as much as I hated the idea of disappointing everyone, I hated the thought of marrying someone who didn't respect me even more. That night, Sabrina came home late, as usual. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, when she walked in. She looked surprised to see me there. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "You're up late." "Yeah," I said, not looking at her. "Couldn't sleep." She paused, probably sensing the tension in the room. "Listen, about earlier," she started, but I cut her off. "Save it, Sabrina. I don't want to hear it right now." My voice was calm, but firm. I wasn't in the mood for another round of her excuses. She stood there for a moment, then sighed and walked into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, staring into the darkness, trying to figure out how did the person I thought I was going to spend my life with turn out to be such a liar. It wasn't even just about Jason anymore. It was about trust. And once that's gone, what's left? The next morning, Sabrina acted like nothing had happened. She came out of the bedroom, already dressed and ready to tackle another day of wedding errands. She poured herself a cup of coffee and started scrolling on her phone, completely ignoring the elephant in the room. "So, what's the plan for today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. I wanted to see if she'd even bother to tell me the truth. She looked up, startled. "Oh, just some last-minute stuff with Grace," she said quickly. "We're going to pick up the centerpieces and make sure the venue is set up the way we want it." I nodded, playing along. "Sounds important. Need any help?" She laughed nervously. No, we've got it covered. You just relax and get ready for the big day." She gave me a quick peck on the cheek before grabbing her bag and heading out the door. The second she was gone, I felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger because she was still lying to my face, and relief because I didn't have to deal with her for a few hours. Eric called me. "Man, what's your plan?" I paused, staring out the window. "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to let her get away with this. She thinks she can just walk all over me and I'll still marry her? She's in for a rude awakening." Eric laughed. "Now that sounds like the Ryan I know. Just let me know if you need backup." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day thinking about how to handle this. I wanted to confront her in front of everyone at the wedding, to expose her lies and make her feel the humiliation she deserved. This wasn't just about her. It was about me taking control of my life and refusing to settle for less than I deserved. When Sabrina came home that evening, she was all smiles again. "Everything's coming together perfectly," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "I think this is going to be the best day of our lives." I forced a smile, trying to hide my frustration. "That's great," I said. "I'm glad everything's working out." She came over and wrapped her arms around me, resting her head on my chest. "I love you, Ryan. I know things have been stressful lately, but I just want you to know how much I appreciate you." Her words felt hollow, like she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. I didn't say anything, just stood there until she let go and went to take a shower. As I sat there, I realized something. I didn't love her anymore. Or maybe I did, but not in the way I used to. The trust was gone. And without that, what was left? A pretty face? And a lot of broken promises? That wasn't enough for me. The night before the wedding, Sabrina was in the bedroom, probably dreaming about walking down the aisle while I was on the couch, thinking about how I was going to handle the next day. I knew I couldn't marry her, but I also knew I needed to make my decision clear in a way she couldn't ignore. By morning, I had a strange sense of calm. I wasn't nervous or angry anymore. I was just ready. Ready to stand up for myself. Ready to put an end to this farce. And ready to walk away from someone who didn't deserve me. Sabrina was buzzing with excitement as we got ready to head to the venue. "Can you believe it? In a few hours, we're going to be husband and wife," she said, beaming. I forced another smile. "Yeah, hard to believe." She didn't notice the edge in my voice, too wrapped up in her own little world. But that was fine. She'd notice soon enough. I played along, answering questions when I needed to, nodding at her dad when he gave me his "don't screw this up" look, and shaking hands with guests as they arrived. It was like I was on autopilot. Inside, I was just waiting for the right moment. When I walked into the ceremony area, the setup was breathtaking. White chairs lined up in perfect rows, flowers everywhere, and the ocean as the backdrop. It looked like something straight out of a magazine. It should have felt special, but all I could think was, how much of this money did I just waste? Guests were slowly filing in, chatting and laughing, oblivious to the disaster brewing. My groomsmen were in place, all looking sharp in their suits. Eric gave me a nod, silently asking if I was okay. I nodded back. No turning back now. Sabrina's family was all smiles, greeting everyone, talking about how excited they were for the big moment. It made me sick. Her dad even came over and patted me on the shoulder. "You ready to officially join the family, son?" I forced a smile. "Absolutely," I said, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. The music started, and everyone took their seats. Sabrina's bridesmaids made their way down the aisle, looking like they were in some romantic movie. I barely noticed them. I was too focused on what I was about to do. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I was steady, ready. Then the music shifted to the classic wedding march, and everyone stood. Sabrina appeared at the end of the aisle, her arm hooked around her dad's. All I could see was a liar, a manipulator, someone who had no problem sneaking around with her ex while I was at home planning our future. It was like her appearance was a mask, hiding the person I now knew her to be. She finally made it to the altar, standing across from me with that big, radiant smile. Her dad gave me a firm handshake and whispered, "Take good care of her." I just nodded, too focused on what was about to happen. The officiant began his opening remarks, talking about love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage. I barely heard a word. I was waiting for my moment. He turned to me and asked the first question. "Ryan, do you take Sabrina to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I took a deep breath, looking Sabrina directly in the eye. Her smile faltered slightly as she noticed the look on my face. "I'm sorry," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "but I can't do this." The crowd gasped. A few people murmured, and Sabrina's smile disappeared entirely. What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I ignored her and turned to the guests. "I need to be honest with all of you," I said, my voice steady. "Sabrina hasn't been honest with me. For weeks now, she's been sneaking around with her ex, Jason. She lied to me, lied to her friends, and lied to all of you." The murmurs grew louder. Sabrina's mom looked like she was about to faint, while her dad's face turned beet red. The bridesmaids exchanged shocked glances, and my groomsmen just stood there, frozen. Eric, though, looked proud, like he'd been waiting for this moment almost as much as I had. Sabrina grabbed my arm, her eyes wide and full of tears. "Ryan, stop! Please don't do this. You're making a mistake." I pulled my arm away, looking at her like she was a stranger. "No, Sabrina. You made the mistake. You made it the moment you decided to see Jason behind my back. You made it every time you lied to my face. I deserve better than this." She started crying, full-on sobbing now, but I wasn't moved. The crowd was dead silent, all eyes on us. It was like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Ryan, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I love you. I'll fix this. Just don't leave me." I shook my head. Love isn't sneaking around with your ex. Love isn't lying to the person you're supposed to spend your life with. If this is what you call love, I don't want it. She tried to grab my arm again, but I stepped back. "You can cry all you want, Sabrina, but this is over. I'm done." I turned to the officiant, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "Sorry for wasting your time," I said, before walking down the aisle past the stunned crowd. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The damage was done. As I walked out of the venue, I felt a strange sense of relief. Sure, I was leaving behind a mess, a really expensive mess, but it was worth it. I dodged a bullet, and I knew it. If she was willing to lie to me before we even got married, what would she do after? Back at my car, I sat for a moment, taking it all in. My phone was blowing up with texts and calls. Sabrina, her mom, even a couple of her bridesmaids, but I ignored them. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I'd said my piece. Eric was the first one to call, and I actually answered. "Dude, that was badass," he said, laughing. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, finally allowing myself to smile. "Better than I've been in weeks. You want me to grab some drinks and come over? I think you've earned it." "Yeah, man. I'll see you in a bit." As I drove away from the venue, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Sure, I'd just blown up what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but it was better than living a lie. Sabrina would have to deal with the consequences of her actions, and I'd get to start fresh, knowing I made the right choice. When I got home, Eric showed up about 20 minutes later, a six-pack in hand. "Man," he said, walking through the door, "that was insane. You really pulled the plug in front of everyone, huh?" I nodded, slumping onto the couch. Had to. She left me no choice. Eric cracked open a can and handed it to me. You should have seen their faces. Her dad looked like he was about to charge the altar. And her bridesmaids? They were whispering to each other the whole time like it was a reality show. I smirked. Good. Let them talk. She earned it. The voicemails were exactly what I expected. Sabrina's voice was shaky and desperate, alternating between apologies and excuses. "Ryan, please call me back. We can fix this. I know I messed up, but we can work through it." Her mom's message was more aggressive. "Ryan, how dare you humiliate my daughter like that? You couldn't have handled this in private? You owe her an apology." I rolled my eyes and deleted the messages without even finishing them. I didn't owe anyone an apology. If anything, Sabrina owed me one, for wasting my time, for lying, for thinking she could get away with it. A few days passed and the fallout started spreading. Word got around quickly, especially after Eric shared the photo he took of Sabrina and Jason at the bar with a few mutual friends. I didn't ask him to, but I wasn't mad about it either. People deserve to know the truth, especially after Sabrina's mom started spinning the story like I was the bad guy. Apparently, Sabrina's version of events was that I'd snapped under wedding pressure and left her at the altar because I couldn't handle the stress. That didn't sit well with me, but I didn't have to say much to set the record straight. The photo of her and Jason said it all. Once people saw that, her excuses fell apart. One of her bridesmaids, Lauren, even reached out to me. "Ryan, I'm so sorry," she said over the phone. "I had no idea she was doing that to you. If I'd known, I would have said something." "It's fine," I said, not really wanting to get into it. "I'm just glad it's over." But Lauren wasn't done. Honestly, Sabrina's been acting sketchy for weeks. Grace and I noticed she'd disappear a lot during wedding stuff, but she'd always say it was just personal errands. I feel bad now for not questioning it. "Don't. It's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't going to waste time being mad at anyone but Sabrina. As for Jason, well, his involvement didn't last long. Apparently, after the wedding disaster, Sabrina tried to lean on him for support. Big surprise. He wasn't interested. He'd been all smiles and charm when they were sneaking around behind my back, but the moment things got real, he ghosted her. A mutual friend told me he blocked her on social media and stopped answering her calls. Classy guy. Sabrina tried reaching out to me again, this time through texts. Her messages were full of emotions, apologies, accusations, and desperate pleas. One text would say, "I'm so sorry, Ryan. I know I messed up, but I love you and I want to make this right." The next would say, "You're being so unfair. Everyone thinks I'm a monster now because of you." I ignored every single one. What was the point? She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. Big difference. A week after the wedding, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I wasn't surprised. It felt like something she'd do. I opened the door, and there she was, looking like a mess. Her hair was tied back in a sloppy bun, and her eyes were puffy like she'd been crying for hours. "Ryan, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "What do you want, Sabrina?" She hesitated, like she wasn't sure how to start. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I screwed up. But I want to fix this." I stared at her, not saying anything. Let her squirm a little. "I'll do whatever it takes," she continued, her voice breaking. "I'll block Jason. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance." I shook my head slowly. "Sabrina, you don't get it, do you? This isn't about blocking Jason or going to therapy. It's about trust. And you destroyed that. There's no coming back from this." She stood there, silent, her tears falling harder. I felt a small pang of pity for her, but it wasn't enough to change my mind. "Go home, Sabrina," I said, stepping back into the apartment. "And don't come back." Before she could say anything else, I closed the door and locked it. As the weeks went on, Sabrina's attempts to contact me slowed down. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Word got around about what happened, and people started distancing themselves from her. Even her closest friends started to see her for who she really was. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Walking away from Sabrina was the best decision I ever made. She showed me exactly who she was, and I believed her. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that you should never settle for less than you deserve. Life's too short for that. And Sabrina? Well, last I heard, she's still single. Jason didn't stick around, and her friends don't trust her anymore. I guess she's got plenty of time now to think about the choices she made. Me? I'm just glad I walked away. Best decision of my life. This story is titled, "My Fiancé Made Fun of My Career at Her Office Party." I broke off the engagement right in front of everyone. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit, I've been sitting on this for a while, trying to make sense of what went down, but I eventually decided to post it. 30 male, work as an electrician. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I love my job. Sure, it's not the kind of thing people put in movies or brag about at fancy dinners, but I've been working with my hands since I was a teenager, and it's what I'm good at. I didn't just stumble into this either. I worked hard to get here. I spent years going to trade school, juggling side gigs to afford my tools, and putting in long hours as an apprentice to learn the ropes. I had to prove myself every step of the way, especially in a field where your reputation can make or break you. I've spent countless hours mastering circuits, panels, and wiring, and there's something incredibly satisfying about fixing something broken and seeing it work again. Plus, I've built a pretty good life from it. I run my own small business, where I handle everything from home repairs to custom lighting setups for businesses. It wasn't easy getting to the point where I could be my own boss, but it was worth it. Now I have a nice truck, loyal clients, and I'm saving to buy my first house. It's not flashy, but it's honest work, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I've always been proud of where I am, but I'll admit, I've had to deal with people looking down on what I do. You know the type, the ones who think real success is sitting in a cubicle or having a long title like Senior Executive something something. I thought my fiance, Lisa, 30 female, wasn't one of those people. Lisa and I have been together for about 4 years. She works in corporate marketing, which is a world I don't really understand, but always tried to respect. She's ambitious, driven, and polished in a way that made me feel like a regular guy standing next to a magazine cover. She's the kind of person who plans everything, from our weekend brunches to our 5-year goals. I liked that about her. I thought we balanced each other out. Me, the hands-on problem solver, and her, the polished go-getter. In the beginning, Lisa would tell me how much she admired my work ethic. She'd say things like, "I love how passionate you are about what you do," or, "You're so good with your hands, it's impressive." I ate that up because it felt good to have someone in my corner, especially someone like Lisa, who could have had her pick of any suit and tie type, but went out of her way to pursue me. I remember asking her once why she was so interested in me, and she said, "Because you're a real man." But now that I'm looking back, I think there were signs that she didn't really respect me or what I do. It's just that I ignored them. For example, there was this one time when we were talking about future goals, and I said I wanted to expand my business, maybe hire a couple of guys to work under me so I wasn't always on the job myself. Her response? "That's cute, babe. You'd be like a little boss." I laughed it off at the time, but now it feels like one of those comments that wasn't as innocent as it seemed. Then there was the way she talked about her own career. She'd go on and on about how hard it was to get where she is, how she had to prove herself in a male-dominated industry, and how she's always working twice as hard as everyone else. Don't get me wrong, I respected the hell out of her hustle, but looking back, I realized she never really asked about my work in the same way. Like, she never cared about the struggles I had running my own business, or the times I had to work 12-hour days in someone's attic during a heat wave just to make ends meet. Still, I never thought it was a big deal. I figured we just had different ways of showing support. She was all about big, flashy gestures, posting pictures of us with captions like, "So proud of my guy," while I was more low-key. I'd show up to her work events, listen to her vent about her boss, and make sure she had dinner waiting when she got home late. To me, that was enough. Things started to feel off earlier this year, though. Lisa got a promotion, and suddenly her life became all about networking and corporate events. She started talking about her colleagues constantly. This guy who's a rising star in the industry. That woman who's such a powerhouse. I noticed she didn't mention me as much anymore. When I asked about it, she brushed it off, saying, "You're not part of that world, babe. It's not a big deal." That stung a little, but I let it go. I figured she was just caught up in the excitement of her new role. Then came the co-workers' holiday party. Lisa had been talking about it for weeks. She kept saying it was a big deal, and that it was important I come with her. "You'll love it," she said. "You'll get to see the people I work with and the world I live in." I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending a night with a bunch of corporate types, but I figured it was important to her, and I wanted to be by her side, so I agreed. As the date got closer, I started to feel more and more out of my element. Lisa was planning everything down to the last detail. What we'd wear, what time we'd arrive, even what kind of conversations I should prepare for. "Just talk about your business," she said. "People love hearing about small businesses." That should have been my first red flag. Why would I need to prepare to talk about what I do? But again, I brushed it off. I wanted to be there for her, even if it meant stepping into a world that felt completely foreign to me. The night of the party, I put on my one good suit and did my best to clean up. Lisa looked incredible, like she always does, in this sleek black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When we got to the venue, I realized just how out of place I was. The place was decked out with fancy decorations. Everyone was dressed to the nines, moving through the room like they were on a runway. I was trying my best to play along, even though this whole thing feels like stepping onto a set of The Office. But, way less funny and way more fake. People are walking around in their overpriced suits and shoes, talking about brand initiatives and quarterly projections. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to keep my tie from choking me to death. Lisa's in her element, though. She's laughing, working the room, and introducing me to everyone like she's the star of the show. Honestly, I was kind of proud of her at first. I mean, she's good at what she does, and it's obvious her colleagues respect her. But the more she introduced me to people, the more it started to feel off. It started small. Every time she'd introduce me, she'd throw in some little comment that felt like a jab. Like, "This is my fiancé. He's an electrician. He keeps things running around the house." Or, "If you ever need someone to fix your outlets, he's your guy." She'd laugh, and so would they. But I wasn't laughing. I brushed it off the first couple of times, telling myself she was just nervous or trying to be funny. But after the fifth or sixth time, I started to wonder if this was just how she talked about me behind my back. Anyway, Lisa and I were standing with a group of her colleagues when one guy, a real smug-looking dude in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my truck, asked me what I do for a living. I smiled and told him, "I'm an electrician. I run my own business. Simple and plain." Before he could say anything, Lisa jumped in. "Oh, he's amazing with his hands," she said, with this overly sweet tone that immediately made me cringe. "He's like my little handyman at home. Anytime something breaks, he's on it. Isn't that adorable?" Adorable. That word hit hard. The way she said it wasn't affectionate. It was condescending, like I was some kind of pet she brought to show off. The group burst out laughing, and I just stood there, trying to keep my face neutral. Inside, I was fuming. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to make a scene. So I just smiled awkwardly and nodded like I was in on the joke. But I wasn't. I was done. The rest of the night didn't get better. Every time we talked to someone new, Lisa found a new way to put me down, whether it was calling me her fix-it guy or joking about how I probably didn't get their world of corporate marketing. At one point, I heard her telling someone, "Oh yeah, he's my little wires and pliers guy, like Bob the Builder, but less ambitious." I was standing there thinking, did she just reduce my job to a joke? I let it slide, trying to keep the peace, but it didn't end there. What really pissed me off was how casual she was about it. Like she didn't even notice she was insulting me. Or worse, she noticed, and just didn't care. The way she looked at me when she made those comments, it wasn't love or pride, it was a pity. Like I was some small-town guy who got lucky to be with her and should just be grateful for it. The worst part? Everyone else seemed to eat it up. They were laughing along with her like her insults were the funniest thing they'd ever heard. And why wouldn't they? In their eyes, I was just the blue-collar guy tagging along with the corporate queen. They didn't know me or what I'd built for myself. All they saw was what Lisa was showing them, someone to laugh at. By the time the toast happened, I was already checked out. Lisa stood up in front of everyone, looking like she owned the place, and started thanking her team for their hard work. I was halfway listening, just trying to get through the night without losing it, when she suddenly said, "And I want to give a special shout out to my fiancé." I looked up thinking, maybe she's going to redeem herself. But nope, he's not exactly a corporate guy, she said, grinning like she was about to drop the funniest joke of the night. But if anyone's dishwasher stops working, he's your guy. The room erupted in laughter. I sat there, frozen, as 100 pairs of eyes turned to me. My face felt like it was on fire. I looked over at Lisa, hoping she'd notice how humiliated I was, but she was too busy soaking up the attention. She was smiling, like she'd just won an award for most entertaining toast. I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself and stepped outside to get some air. My hands were shaking, and my chest felt tight. I replayed her words over and over in my head, each one hitting harder than the last. Not a corporate guy. Your guy for power outages. What the hell had just happened? That wasn't a toast. That was a takedown. So, I'm standing outside this ridiculously fancy venue, breathing in the cold air and trying to cool off. The sound of everyone laughing at Lisa's toast is still echoing in my head. I don't know if I'm more embarrassed or angry, or maybe a mix of both. I kept thinking, is this how she's always seen me? Like some handyman she picked up for convenience? A few minutes later, Lisa comes outside. She's got this big, oblivious smile on her face. "There you are," she says, like I'm some kid who wandered off. "Why'd you sneak out?" I look at her, trying to stay calm, but I can already feel the frustration bubbling up. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" She blinks, clearly caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" "The toast," I say, my voice rising a little. "You basically turned me into a joke in front of your entire office." Lisa rolls her eyes, like I'm the one being unreasonable here. "Oh, come on. It was just a joke. Everyone thought it was funny." "Yeah, because they don't know me," I snapped. "All they know is what you told them. That I'm some not corporate guy who's good for fixing their dishwashers. Do you even realize how disrespectful that is?" She sighs, like she's talking to a child. "You're overreacting. It wasn't that deep. I was just trying to lighten the mood." Lighten the mood? I could feel my fists clenching at my sides. But I took a deep breath and tried to explain. "Lisa, I've worked my ass off to get where I am. I run my own business. I make a good living. And you reduced all of that to a punchline. How do you think that makes me feel?" Instead of apologizing or even trying to understand, Lisa crossed her arms and gave me this annoyed look. I don't know why you're being so sensitive about this. It's not like I said anything untrue. You're an electrician. It's not exactly a glamorous job, and there it is. The truth, plain and simple. I stare at her, stunned. Wow, I said. So that's how you really see me? Like I'm just some guy with a toolbox who's lucky to be with you. I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth. All I'm saying is that you need to learn how to take a joke. This isn't about me. It's about your insecurity. She started to yell, my insecurity. I felt my blood boiling now. This isn't about me being insecure. It's about you not respecting me or what I do. Do you even realize how condescending you sounded tonight? How condescending you always sound? Lisa's face hardened. You know what? Maybe I do think you're overreacting. And maybe you should consider why you're so defensive about your job. If you were confident in yourself, you wouldn't let a little teasing bother you. That's when I realized we're not just having an argument. This is a fundamental problem. This is who Lisa is. She didn't respect me, and she never has. I take a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. You know what, Lisa? I can't do this anymore. Her eyes narrowed. Do what? This, I say, motioning between us. Us. This relationship. I'm done. Lisa stared at me like I've just grown a second head. Then she laughs. A short, disbelieving laugh. You're kidding, right? You're really going to break up with me over a joke? It's not just the joke, I said firmly. It's how you see me. How you've always seen me. You don't respect me, Lisa. You never have. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being treated like I'm less than you just because I don't work in an office. Her expression shifted from disbelief to anger. Are you serious right now? Do you even realize how ridiculous you sound? You think you're so special because you run a little business, fixing people's wiring? Well, guess what? It's not that impressive. Her words were harsh, but they solidified my decision. I pulled the engagement ring off my finger and held it out to her. Good luck finding someone you actually respect, I said, calmly and firmly. She stared at the ring like it was going to explode in her hand. You're making a huge mistake, she said. No one else is going to put up with your fragile ego. I only replied with, maybe not, but at least I'll have my self-respect. And with that, I turned and walked back into the party to grab my stuff, leaving her standing there in the cold, with the ring still in her hand. The moment I stepped back into the party to grab my coat, the buzz of conversation and laughter hit me like a wall. The room was still alive, but I noticed people sneaking glances at me. I knew it was going to make a scene. Honestly, I didn't care. Let them talk about it for the next 5 weeks. Let them dissect every detail. I wanted this moment to stick with Lisa and everyone here. She'd spent the entire night tearing me down. Now it was my turn to walk out on my terms. As I reached for my coat, I heard the sharp click of Lisa's heels behind me. I knew she wouldn't let me leave without some kind of showdown. You're really going to do this? She hissed. She glanced nervously around, trying to make sure no one overheard. Here? In front of everyone? I turned slowly, locking eyes with her. I could feel all those curious glances from her colleagues, the way conversations were quieting as people tuned in. Lisa, you already did this, I said, keeping my voice calm but loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. You crossed the line humiliating me in front of everyone. I'm just leaving before it gets worse. Her eyes widened for a split second before narrowing into a glare. Don't be so dramatic, she spat, grabbing my arm with enough force to make my jacket wrinkle. Her nails dug into my sleeve as she tried to keep her composure. No one even noticed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I pulled my arm free and took a step back. Really? I said, raising my voice. Because I'm pretty sure half the room wasn't laughing with you after your little toast. They were laughing at me, and you made sure of it. That's not what happened, she snapped, her voice rising just enough to draw more attention. The hum of conversation around us dropped a notch. People weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. They were laughing because it was funny, she insisted, her cheeks flushed with anger. You're the one who's turning this into a big deal. I took a breath, steadying myself, and let the silence between us hang for a moment. Lisa, I said firmly, you turned me into a punchline. You made it crystal clear how little you respect me, and now you're acting like I'm crazy for being upset. Do you even hear yourself right now? Her face turned bright red, and not from embarrassment. This was pure, unfiltered rage. She crossed her arms. You're twisting everything I said, she shot back. I was trying to include you. You should be thanking me for making you part of the conversation instead of sulking like a child. Thanking you? You didn't include me. You mocked me. You made me sound like some dumb handyman who's only good for fixing your lights. That's not including me, Lisa. That's tearing me down so you can feel better about yourself. Before Lisa could respond, a voice cut in. Hey, Is everything okay here? I turned to see one of her coworkers, a woman in a crisp suit, clutching looking uncomfortable. Lisa whipped around to face her, putting on the fakest smile I've ever seen. Oh, it's fine, just a little misunderstanding, she said quickly, her voice an octave higher than usual. The woman glanced between us, clearly unconvinced. Well, if you need anything, she trailed off, giving me a sympathetic look before stepping away. Lisa's smile dropped the second her coworker turned her back. Do you see what you're doing? She hissed, her voice dripping with venom. You're embarrassing me in front of my entire office. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that cut through the room. I'm embarrassing you? I said, shaking my head. You spent the whole night treating me like a joke, and now you're worried about how you look? That's rich. I couldn't help but laugh, a sharp, biting sound that cut through the tension. I'm embarrassing you? I said, shaking my head. You spent the whole night treating me like a joke, and now you're worried about how you look? Unbelievable. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a tall man near the entrance watching us. He looked familiar. Then I realized it was Lisa's boss. He didn't say anything, but the way he crossed his arms and leaned slightly forward made it clear he was listening. Lisa noticed him too. Her face paled, and her whole demeanor shifted. Can we just talk about this later? She said, her voice suddenly softer. You're making a scene. I shook my head, thinking, that's exactly what I wanted. No, Lisa, we're not doing this later. We're doing it now. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life with someone who thinks they're better than me just because I don't work in an office. I deserve more than this. More than you. Lisa's eyes darted between me, her boss, and the growing number of people pretending not to watch. Fine, she said, her tone practically spitting venom. Walk away. But don't come crying to me when you realize no one else is going to put up with your fragile ego. I couldn't help but smirk, shaking my head. Cry to you? You're joking, right? I'm not the one who's going to struggle finding someone who respects me. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. My silence and the look on my face said it all, while staring at her, letting her words hang in the air. I wasn't going to stoop to her level. Instead, I turned to leave. Good luck finding someone who'll tolerate you, I said. Enjoy the party, folks, I said over my shoulder as I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear the murmurs spreading through the room, like ripples in a pond. People were whispering, exchanging glances, and I caught snippets of their conversations as I passed. Did you see that? What the hell was that about? I knew she was a bit much, but damn. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew the damage was done. Lisa wanted to be the center of attention, and now she had it. Not as the queen of the party, but as the woman who got called out in front of everyone. Let them talk. By the time I reached my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. I stood up for myself, and it felt damn good. Lisa could spin her story however she wanted, but I knew the truth, and so did everyone else who saw what happened. The days after the party were messy, to put it lightly. Lisa kept texting and calling me. They ranged from, can we just talk about this, to full-on, you're acting like a child, and everything in between. I didn't reply to any of them. Honestly, I needed space. I needed to figure out what the hell just happened, and how someone I thought loved and respected me could treat me like I was a punchline. But Lisa wasn't the type to sit quietly. Oh no. By day 3, I started hearing from mutual friends. Apparently, she wasn't content to just blow up my phone. She needed to make sure everyone else knew her side of the story, too. She's saying you flipped out over nothing, one of my friends texted me. Like, she's making it sound like you stormed out because you're too sensitive to handle a joke. Another one sent me screenshots from Lisa's social media. There it was in plain sight. A post about how she dodged a bullet because some people can't handle a strong woman with a sense of humor. The comments were filled with her friends hyping her up. You deserve better. He sounds so insecure. Good riddance. Insecure. That word kept coming up, and it pissed me off every time I saw it. I wasn't insecure. I was tired. Tired of being belittled. Tired of being treated like I wasn't enough because I didn't fit into her perfect little corporate world. A couple of days later, I got a message that stopped me in my tracks. It was from one of Lisa's coworkers, someone I barely knew but who had been at the party. Hey, I just wanted to reach out and say I'm sorry for laughing at that toast, she wrote. Honestly, I always thought Lisa talked about you in a weird way, like she was settling for you or something. I didn't realize how bad it was until the other night. You didn't deserve that. That confirmed what I'd started to suspect. This wasn't just a one-time thing. Lisa had been looking down on me for a long time, probably since the beginning. I thought we were equals, partners. But to her, I was just the guy with the tools, someone she could control and joke about when it suited her. I started replaying our entire relationship in my head, picking apart every moment that felt off. Like the time she introduced me to her parents and said, he's not your typical corporate guy, but he's great with his hands. Or the time she told her friends, yeah, he owns a business, but it's like, small, not stressful like my job. How did I not see it? How did I not realize she was never proud of me, never truly respected me? The real cherry on top came about a week later. I got a call from Lisa's best friend, Jen. Now, Jen and I had always been cool. We weren't super close, but we got along well enough. So when her name popped up on my phone, I figured maybe she was calling to play peacemaker or something. But nope. I just thought you should know, Jen said. Lisa's been telling people that she settled for you because she thought you'd be easy to control. She said she didn't think you'd ever leave her because you'd feel too lucky to have her. She actually said that? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Yeah, Jen replied. I didn't want to believe it at first, but after what happened at the party, I'm sorry, man. You deserve better. I thanked her for telling me, but honestly, I didn't know how to feel. I mean, I was already done with Lisa, but hearing that, it was like adding insult to injury. This whole time, I thought I was building a life with someone who saw me as an equal, and she was treating me like some charity case. After the dust settled, it was like a switch flipped in my life. Lisa and I were done. No more texts, no more calls, no more fake apologies or attempts to spin the story. My life on my end was looking brighter. I threw myself into my work, taking on more projects, and I decided to sell my engagement ring and use the money to book myself a trip to the mountains, a place I'd always wanted to visit but never got around to because Lisa wasn't into rustic vacation. Turns out sitting by a campfire and looking at the stars is a hell of a lot better than listening to people talk about brand synergy over tiny hors d'oeuvres. During that trip, I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted and what I didn't want. I realized I'd spent way too much time trying to fit into Lisa's world, letting her define my worth based on her shallow metrics. That wasn't happening anymore. Then came the ultimate bit of karma. About a month after the party, I heard through the grapevine that her antics at the party and her behavior afterward had caught the attention of her boss. Apparently, some of her coworkers had started talking about the incident, and it made its way up the chain. She's been really tense at work, one of her colleagues told me. It's like she knows people are talking about her behind her back, and it's driving her nuts. She even snapped at someone during a meeting last week, which is not like her. Another mutual friend shared a text from Lisa, where she wrote, I worked my ass off to get where I am, and now it's like one stupid night is all anyone remembers. From what I could tell, the realization was starting to sink in. She hadn't just lost me. She damaged her professional relationships too. The people who once respected her were now questioning her judgment. I didn't get all the details, but from what I heard, the higher-ups weren't thrilled about how Lisa represented herself. She was passed over for a promotion she'd been gunning for, and let's just say she wasn't happy about it. I won't lie, I felt a little satisfaction knowing karma had finally caught up with her. Not because I wanted her to fail, but because it felt like validation. Her attitude, her need to tear others down to build herself up, it wasn't just a problem in our relationship. It was who she was. However, these days, I'm in a much better place. I'm glad I ended the relationship before getting married and have kids involved, and each day I feel my decision was so right. I've expanded my business, upgraded my tools, and even started teaching an evening class for aspiring electricians. Sharing what I know and seeing people get excited about learning the trade has been a game changer for me. I've also reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from during my time with Lisa. Looking back, I realize how much of my life I'd centered around her. Her friends, her interests, her goals. Now, I'm focusing on what makes me happy, and it feels damn good. As for Lisa, I haven't heard from her directly since the breakup. She's still doing her thing, posting her cryptic quotes, and probably telling anyone who'll listen that she's the victim. But honestly, I don't care. The truth is, walking away from that relationship was the best thing I've ever done. It wasn't just about the party or the toast. It was about realizing that I deserve to be with someone who values me for who I am, not for how I fit into their narrative. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that respect isn't optional in a relationship. You can't love someone you don't respect, and you shouldn't try to stay with someone who doesn't respect you. So to anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, trust your gut. If someone's tearing you down instead of lifting you up, let them go. You'll thank yourself later. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. It's been a wild ride, but I feel like I'm finally back on track. And if anyone ever needs an outlet rewired, you know who to call.
A useless person like you is not needed in this company. Disappear, okay? My boss, Mary, always had something snide to say whenever we crossed paths. Finally, I reached my limit and slowly put on a smile as I spoke to him. Useless people should be fired, right? Yeah, finally, you understand. Mary seemed to sense something odd in my attitude, but believed I accepted his opinion. He quickly reverted to his arrogant demeanor and flashed a nasty grin. But at the shareholder meeting the next day, Mary would end up kneeling before me. "My name is James Smith. I'm a 41-year-old salaried employee. I grew up in a comfortable household. But just before graduating high school, my father suddenly passed away from a stroke, and my world turned upside down. Losing the family's breadwinner left my mother and me wondering what to do next. My mother had been a housewife and had no work experience, and I was preparing for college entrance exams. Additionally, I had a younger brother. My brother was much smarter than me, and our father had high hopes for his future. I also thought my brother would gain much more from college than I would. So I decided to give up further education and get a job after high school. I started with a part-time job at a nearby company, and a few years later, I became a full-time employee. The company I work for doesn't pay as much as a well-known large corporation, but it has a homey atmosphere and the employees get along well. Even though I joined with just a high school diploma, they warmly accepted me. Many people took the time to share their work knowledge and give advice about my personal life. This was largely due to the president, John Williams. President Williams had also given up on college due to family circumstances and started the company with a friend. As a result, several other employees in the company, like me, only had high school or even middle school diplomas. President Williams always looked out for us, inviting us to meals and giving generous bonuses. He was so caring that every employee respected him. However, a person who disrupted this great atmosphere appeared. Her name was Mary Johnson, and she was recruited as a department head due to her exceptional talent. Mary had attended an elite private school since elementary school and graduated all the way through college on a straight path. Naturally, she was born into a wealthy family that could easily afford such expensive education, making her quite the lady. She wore different outfits every day and adorned herself with what seemed like expensive accessories and bags. While personal hobbies like that are no concern of mine, it became her daily routine to brag about her possessions to us employees. Moreover, her work attitude was terrible. She looked down on employees who didn't graduate from prestigious universities, calling them commoners. Those with high school or middle school diplomas were treated as servants. You know, people aren't born equal. Compared to someone of my caliber, you all live at the bottom of society. It's no surprise that she was avoided by everyone shortly after starting, given that she said such things with a straight face. Mary had a twisted personality, and she particularly disliked me, making snide remarks whenever we met. "So, you only have a high school diploma. I don't need useless high school grads on my team." Hearing such words all the time at work recently made me feel exhausted. Once, I bravely asked her why she said such terrible things, and she casually replied, "Poor people with only a high school diploma are unpleasant to look at. I don't want you in my sight." Her response was so shocking that I was speechless. But it seemed to be her true feelings, as she never gave me meaningful work and always assigned me pointless chores whenever she had the chance. Just yesterday, she handed me a broom and a rag, telling me to clean out a storage room full of junk. "This room doesn't seem to be used anytime soon." I said, "We might use it someday, right? If you clean it up now, it will be nice and tidy when we need it. Even a useless high school grad can handle cleaning a room, right?" She insisted, but I couldn't find the time to do it. "I'm sorry, but maybe someone else who is free can do it, or we can handle it during the year-end cleaning." I bowed my head, but Mary was furious that I refused. "Are you refusing a task assigned by your superior? You need to restart your career from scratch." Then she shoved the broom and rag into my hands and stood guard in front of the room as if to ensure I wouldn't leave until I finished cleaning. Seeing her stance, I had no choice but to start cleaning. But after just 10 minutes, she got bored and said, "Next time, do it as soon as you're told. I'll let you off the hook for today," before strutting off on her rounds. Finally, I could get back to my actual work at my desk, but that turned out to be a mistake. A few hours later, Mary stormed in and yelled, "Why did you stop halfway? Don't you have any sense of responsibility?" I held back my desire to argue and listened quietly until she was satisfied and left. By the time she was done, I was exhausted both mentally and physically. How did someone like Mary become a department head? Everyone in the office wondered the same thing. The reason lay in her ability to present a good front. During her job interview, she had portrayed herself as a cheerful and kind elite. I easily fooled the interviewers with my performance. It was a piece of cake to get the job by pretending to be nice. I heard this rumor going around. Moreover, she had a track record of outstanding achievements at her previous company and was brought in as a department head with a reputation for being well-versed in business management. After joining the company, Mary made a great impression on the president and other executives. At gatherings with upper management, she was all smiles and very proactive. She became such a different person that it was hard to believe she was the same individual. Come to think of it, when Mary first arrived at our office, she seemed very nice. During her introduction, she bowed politely and said, "I'm Johnson, the new department head. I look forward to working together as a team." We had high hopes for our new department head due to her polite manner. However, as time passed, her true nature became evident, and she started acting like an evil boss. Now, it's clear that Mary kisses up to the higher-ups and treats her subordinates poorly. Because of this, other employees are also very dissatisfied with her, and some even wish for a new department head. The atmosphere in the office has become tense lately. This is because incidents of theft involving employees' money and belongings have been occurring. Despite our efforts to enforce the use of locked lockers and remind everyone not to leave their belongings unattended, the thief would strike when employees' attention waned. I was eager to catch the culprit and had been making efforts to do so, but then a major incident occurred. It happened one day when I was about to go out for lunch. Mary suddenly came to my desk and slammed a document down. "Don't think you can just go out for lunch. What are you going to do about this?" The document she thrust at me contained a copy of an email and a complaint from a client. As I read it, I was shocked by its contents. "Your products are of the worst quality, frequently damaged, and overpriced. This is our IP off, and we are terminating future business. What is this email about? Don't play dumb, you're the one who sent this email." The phone hasn't stopped ringing with complaints from the client. Mary was furious, her eyes blazing, but I had no memory of sending such an email. "Wait a minute, I've never seen this email, nor have I sent anything to the client. The email address isn't even mine." I pointed to the copy and explained, but Mary refused to change her opinion. "Everyone else handling this client is a college graduate. Only a high school grad like you would send such an offensive message." She continued to insist with unreasonable logic, looking down on me with her arms crossed. "I'm telling you, I didn't do it. Not only did you make the client angry, but you also don't even apologize. Poor people are poor in spirit, too. You're not just incompetent, you're a menace to the company." Hearing this, I couldn't contain my anger any longer. Being falsely accused, told to apologize, and then insulted was too much for me to handle. But instead of backing down when she saw my anger, Mary just laughed at me. "What's with that dissatisfied look? Useless people like you aren't needed in this company. Disappear, okay?" That was the last straw. I had always swallowed my anger, but this was too much. I decided then and there to use all my power to teach Mary a lesson she wouldn't forget. Facing Mary, who was still laughing, I slowly put on a smile and spoke to her. "Useless people should be fired, right? Yeah, finally, you understand." Mary seemed to sense something strange in my attitude, but she assumed I had accepted her opinion. She quickly reverted to her arrogant demeanor and sneered at me. "Looks like you finally understand your position. It feels good to think about a useless person like you leaving." She flashed a cold smile at me. And whenever she saw me after that, She made sure to say things like, "It's refreshing not having a nuisance around," or "I'm glad to be free from babysitting an incompetent employee." But I wasn't bothered at all. In fact, I could barely contain my laughter, knowing how clueless she was. The next day, our company held its shareholder meeting. I had to attend, so I went to the venue. As soon as I entered, Mary spotted me. She stormed over with an angry expression as soon as she saw me in the room. "Why is a lowly employee like you showing up at the shareholder meeting? You probably don't know. But this meeting is for insiders only. Regular employees aren't invited. I was told to be here." I calmly stated the fact, but Mary didn't seem to hear a word I said. "I sent an email to everyone yesterday saying that regular employees didn't need to attend today. It's so troublesome when incompetent and vulgar people can't even check their emails." Saying this, she started pushing me out, trying to actually make me leave. "Come on, get out before you bother the president and others." "But I have business to attend to at the shareholder meeting." I was at a loss, not knowing how to leave when I was supposed to stay. "What's all this commotion? The shareholder meeting is about to start. This is disgraceful." I turned to see the president standing there. "Hello, actually, I was just..." As I began to explain the situation, Mary interrupted. She put on her usual polite smile reserved for the higher-ups and bowed deeply to the president. "I'm sorry. This is James Smith, and he was trying to attend the shareholder meeting without knowing his place. I, as his superior, was just sending him away." Hearing this, the president's expression grew more severe, his mouth twisting in displeasure. "What on earth are you talking about? You're absolutely right. Smith always behaves strangely, and I have trouble dealing with him." Mary started to proudly explain how incompetent and useless I was, but the president quickly cut her off. "No, that's not it. I was asking what on earth Mary was talking about." "What, me?" Mary froze, her usual confident smile turning stiff. "What exactly do you mean by strange things? Do you really not understand?" The president raised his eyebrows in exasperation at her response. "Smith here holds 90% of the company's shares as a special controlling shareholder. Of course, he has to attend the shareholder meeting." "What? That can't be true." Mary turned pale and stared at me, trembling. When I slowly nodded, she let out a short scream and collapsed on the spot. In reality, I own 90% of the shares of the company I work for. A shareholder holding over 90% of the issued shares is called a special controlling shareholder. Such a shareholder is a powerful figure, with the right to demand all other shareholders to sell their shares through a resolution of the board of directors. This fact was known to employees at the manager level and above, but Mary was unaware. Because she had made herself disliked by acting high and mighty right after joining the company, no one bothered to inform her. What? How can someone hold 90% of a company's shares? Normally, people own just a few shares, and even having more than 50% is unusual. Mary sat on the floor, mumbling to herself, clearly in complete confusion. Unable to watch any longer, the president began to explain. "This company was actually founded by my father, who served as its president. However, when I was in high school, he suddenly passed away from a stroke, and his best friend, who was the vice president at the time, took over as the president. The president also arranged for me to join the company immediately after graduating from high school to groom me as the next president. There were discussions about making me president right away, but it was decided that it would be better for me to gain experience first to avoid risking the company and its employees due to my inexperience. So, I inherited 90% of the company's shares from my father and worked on the ground while learning management skills from the president. My smarter younger brother graduated from college and now works as the executive vice president. I'm glad to see Smith has developed into a competent employee. I'm thinking about stepping down as president, and I told you this when you joined, Mary." "Yeah, but..." Mary struggled to get up, mumbling incoherently. It seems you weren't paying attention. I just assumed he was an incompetent, low-educated person. She was clearly shocked by my true identity. Mary inadvertently let her true feelings slip and was immediately reprimanded by the president. Watch your language. A person's worth is not determined by their educational background. But I think it's wrong for Smith to hold 90% of the shares. Instead of reflecting, Mary started arguing with the president. It's just because he's the son of the former president that he holds 90% of the shares. I am much more competent and contribute more to the company, judged by ability. I was utterly astonished that she would declare herself so superior. The president seemed to feel the same way, letting out a deep sigh before speaking in a low voice. Smith is far more competent than you. He listens to the employees' needs, constantly improves operations, and boosts workplace morale. I do that too. Mary tried to compete with me no matter what, only making the president angrier. Don't be ridiculous. Do you think I'm unaware? I've heard reports that you're harassing other employees instead of boosting morale. The president's face hardened as he began to reprimand Mary for her behavior. You put on a good face for me and the upper management, but I've been informed about your horrible treatment of subordinates. Looking down on people based on their education, assigning unnecessary tasks, and disrupting their actual work. That was just to help them grow their abilities. Mary continued with her weak excuses, but the president wasn't buying it. Enough. You don't need to say anything more. Besides, you are neither an executive nor a shareholder, so you don't need to attend the shareholder meeting. I already sent an email about this. What? I thought it was a mistake. I'm an extremely competent employee. Right. I figured the president must have made an error in the recipient list, so I was eager to attend today. To assume the president made a mistake and then crash the shareholder meeting showed just how brazen Mary was. The president sighed deeply and turned his back to her. Regardless, you weren't invited today. I'll be calling you in tomorrow, so go home for now. But I'm a highly valued department head. I'm essential for the shareholder meeting. Mary persisted, but the president sternly ordered her to leave, and she finally retreated. Watching the entire scene unfold, I was thoroughly astonished. The president was usually very gentle, treating employees like family. I had never seen him this angry, even though I had known him for a long time. This incident clearly deeply angered him. After that, the shareholder meeting concluded without further issues, and I prepared to head home. It had been a hectic day with Mary's interruption and the president's anger, so I planned to relax once I got home. I had no idea another incident was waiting for me. As I left the venue and headed toward the taxi stand, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned to see Mary sprinting toward me. She quickly caught up and stood in front of me, blocking my way, breathing heavily but grinning. Oh, good, I made it in time. Why are you here? I thought you had left already. Could she have been waiting outside until the shareholder meeting was over? Mary ignored my suspicious look and started talking with a creepy smile plastered on her face. The president said he would call me in tomorrow, but I have a bad feeling about it. I thought I'd ask a favor from you, Mr. Smith. A favor? I had a bad feeling about this, and my face tensed up. Mary suddenly bowed deeply. I'm sorry for everything I've said and done. I'm apologizing. So could you please say some nice things about me to the president? You're not apologizing because you feel bad. You just want to escape blame. I refuse. I firmly rejected her and tried to leave. But Mary spread her arms wide, blocking my way. She kept bowing repeatedly while holding her arms up like in a bizarre dance, attracting a lot of attention. Unfortunately, it was a busy street, and the stares from passers-by were painfully obvious. When children started giggling at her, Mary finally seemed to realize how embarrassing she looked. Anyway, make sure to support me tomorrow. I'm your boss, remember? Shouting this, Mary ran off as fast as she had come. She tripped spectacularly, drawing even more attention, but I pretended not to notice and quietly left. The next day, when I arrived at work, Mary, with her leg wrapped in a bandage, approached me. "I hurt myself after I fell yesterday. I scraped my leg and got bruises. It was awful." "Is that so? What a misfortune." I responded coldly. If it had been anyone else, I would have shown concern, but considering everything she had done to me, I felt no sympathy. More importantly, doesn't the president have something important to discuss with you? Right. I was told to go to the president's office as soon as I arrived. Since I was also summoned by the president, I reluctantly accompanied Mary. She kept complaining about her foot pain and insisted on walking slowly, which was really annoying. During all this, she never apologized to me. I felt justified in not forgiving her as I knocked on the president's door. Upon entering, we were met with the president's sternest expression yet. The moment she saw the president, Mary straightened up, as if she had never been complaining about her pain. "Good morning, Mr. President. What can I do for you today?" If someone hadn't witnessed yesterday's argument, they might think she was a polite woman. But the president wasn't fooled and looked at her with a cold stare. "It's too late to try and fix your attitude. Your punishment has already been decided." "Punishment? What do you mean by punishment?" Mary turned pale, but the president continued without hesitation. "You are being dismissed for misconduct. We no longer need you at this company." "You mean I'm fired? This punishment is too harsh." Mary tried to approach the president but stumbled due to the pain in her injured leg. The president remained unfazed and calmly continued his explanation. "As for the reasons for your dismissal, first is your harassment of subordinates. I haven't harassed anyone. I admit I've been strict, but it was to train my subordinates." Despite having me as a witness next to her, Mary boldly insisted on her innocence. But the president furrowed his brow deeper and pulled out a voice recorder. "This voice recorder contains your abusive remarks. When did you?" While Mary stood in shock, the president pressed play. Her familiar, nasty comments about education and job positions played back, leaving not only me and the president, but even Mary herself turning pale. "Did I really say all that? Both I and the other employees endured your abuse every day. Can you understand our suffering and anger?" My words caused Mary to waver. "I'm sorry." It was the first genuine apology I had ever heard from her. But her offenses didn't end there. "The second reason for your dismissal is that you caused trouble for our clients just to harass Smith." The president then produced the document detailing the email incident from the day before the shareholder meeting. An investigation of our company computers revealed that the email was sent from your computer. Do you have any explanation for this? "I'm sorry. I wrote that email." Faced with irrefutable evidence from the computer investigation, Mary finally conceded. Mary, who had admitted her guilt in a low voice, finally began to explain why she harassed me so persistently. "I worked hard to graduate from an elite university and struggled to become a department head. But Smith, with just a high school diploma, was liked by the other employees. It made me so angry. So, I thought I'd scare him a little. It was just a prank. I didn't mean any harm." Her selfish reasoning made the president slump his shoulders in exasperation. "Don't make childish excuses. And what about the third reason for your dismissal?" The president then showed us footage from the security cameras installed in the office. The video clearly showed Mary sneaking around and searching for valuables. Mary turned pale and stared intently at the screen. Her previously remorseful demeanor vanished, and she began to sweat nervously as she fired questions at the president. "How? I checked all the security camera positions. I shouldn't be on tape. Recently, employees' wallets and personal belongings were being stolen, so we installed additional security cameras. Even as a department head, you resorted to theft. What were you thinking?" Scolded by the president, Mary lost all her strength and slumped to the floor. She hung her head and began to sob, but eventually, she started to speak the truth. "The truth is, I bought too many luxury items and went into debt. The repayment deadline was coming up, and my parents wouldn't help me anymore, so I resorted to stealing from the employees. I had no idea Mary was buying luxury goods on credit. Not being able to repay with her salary and being abandoned by her family left her in a dire situation. Why didn't you just sell the luxury items? I muttered, and Mary burst into tears. I did sell them, but they said they weren't popular or had scratches, so they didn't bring in much money. I had held off on her dismissal, thinking there might be some reason behind her actions until I heard her side of the story. But after reviewing the evidence from the voice recorder and security cameras, it became clear that her reasons were petty and that she was a much worse person than I had imagined. It took some effort to gather all the evidence, but I'm glad I consulted the president and we made the right decision. Mary, please reflect and atone for your sins. As I spoke my final words to her, she cried and said, "I'm sorry," but I couldn't believe her words until she truly paid for her actions. Afterward, we consulted the police about Mary, and she ended up with a criminal record. A thorough investigation revealed she had stolen from donation boxes at temples and shrines, which ultimately led to her imprisonment. I hope she sincerely reflects on her actions and atones for her crimes. Meanwhile, I spent my final year of training as Mr. Williams's secretary before finally becoming the president. Moving forward, I plan to continue valuing employee performance over educational background and aim to create a rewarding workplace. My brother, who was the executive vice president, has now become the vice president and is my indispensable right-hand man. His dedication inspires me to keep striving. I want to continue working with the people around me to cherish both the company and its employees.
My name's Laura, and I'm the younger of two sisters in what you might call a blended family. But blended implies some kind of harmony, and let me tell you, there wasn't much of that growing up. My mom had been married before, to some guy who died when my half-sister was 5. Then she met my dad, they got hitched, and pop. Out I came a year later. Sounds like a neat little package, right? Wrong. See, my mom had this house she inherited from her first husband. Nice place, nothing too fancy. She also owned a sewing factory. After she and my dad tied the knot, she asked him to help run the business. They made a good team, I'll give him that. Dad handled the money stuff, Mom took care of making things and dealing with people. They doubled the company's profits in no time. I remember overhearing them talk about the future once when I was little. They were in the kitchen, thinking I was asleep. "I hope the girls will take over someday," Mom said. "Keep it in the family, you know?" Dad agreed. "That'd be great. Laura's got a good eye for design already. And Sarah's sharp with numbers." Little did they know, Sarah had other ideas. My dear half-sister never let me forget that everything, the house, the business, even the damn spoons we ate with, belonged to her and Mom. "This is my house," she'd say, blocking the door to her room. "You're just living in it, 'cause your dad mooches off Mom." I was too young to understand why she was so mean. I just wanted to play with her cool toys or borrow a pencil to draw. But every time I touched something, she'd snatch it away. "That's mine," she'd screech. "My real dad bought it before he died. You can't have it." Mom tried to stop her. "Sarah, honey, that's not nice. Laura's your sister." "Half-sister," Sarah would spit back. "And she gets everything. It's not fair." Dad never said much during these fights. He'd just pat my head and tell me to ignore her. But how could I? She made my life hell. One day, I found some colored pencils in the living room. I was so excited, finally, I could draw the beautiful dresses I saw in my head. I started sketching, lost in my own little world. Then Sarah stormed in. "Those are mine," she yelled, grabbing the pencils. Before I could stop her, she tore up my drawings. I ran to Mom, sobbing. She hugged me tight and marched over to Sarah's room. "That's enough," I heard her shout. "You will not treat your sister this way. But nothing changed. Sarah kept finding ways to remind me I didn't belong. And as we got older, it only got worse. As we grew older, my parents tried their best to keep the peace. They'd buy us the same clothes, give us equal gifts on holidays. But it was never enough for Sarah. Laura's sweater is softer, she'd complain. Or, her necklace has more jewels. You always give her the best stuff. It didn't matter that it wasn't true. In Sarah's mind, I was the favorite, the interloper stealing her rightful place. When I was about 10, my parents decided to sell the old house and buy a bigger one. I remember the day we moved in, how excited I was to have my own room. "This is amazing," I squealed, twirling around the empty space. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face dark. "Don't get too comfortable. This house belongs to me, and Mom, you're just a guest here." I felt my stomach drop. Even in this new place, nothing had changed. Later that night, I heard Mom and Dad talking in hushed tones. "I don't know what to do anymore," Mom sighed. "I've tried everything with Sarah." "Maybe we should take her to see someone," Dad suggested. "A therapist or counselor?" Mom agreed, and soon Sarah was going to weekly sessions. But if anything, it only made her more resentful. "Oh, so now I'm crazy," she spat one day after a particularly rough appointment. "You just want to fix me so precious Laura can have a perfect life." I wanted to scream that my life was far from perfect with her in it, but I kept my mouth shut. It never did any good to argue with Sarah. As the years went by, Sarah's victim complex only grew. Everything was someone else's fault, usually mine. She'd complain endlessly about how unfair her life was, how no one understood her. "You're all against me," she'd say. "You owe me for everything I've been through." I started avoiding her as much as possible, staying in my room or at friends' houses. Anything to escape the constant drama. When Sarah finally graduated high school and left for college in another city, it felt like the whole house breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Maybe some time away will do her good," Mom said hopefully. For the first time in years, I felt like I could relax in my own home. No more walking on eggshells, no more surprise attacks of Sarah's jealousy. Those 4 years while Sarah was away at college were the happiest of my young life. I threw myself into my studies, especially art and design. I'd spend hours sketching clothes, dreaming up new styles. Mom noticed my passion and started bringing home scraps of fabric from the factory for me to play with. "You've got a real talent, Laura," she'd say, admiring my creations. For once, I felt seen for who I was, not just as Sarah's annoying little sister. I started to imagine a future where I could use my skills, maybe even in the family business. After graduation, I'd been accepted to a college in another city to study design, which was a dream come true. The night before I left for college, Mom and Dad sat me down for a talk. "We're so proud of you, Laura," Mom said, her eyes misty. "You know we support your dreams, right?" I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. Dad chimed in. "We hope that after you graduate, you'll consider coming back to work with us. Your designs could really take the company to the next level." I promised to think about it, but honestly, I was eager to spread my wings. The idea of returning to my hometown, where Sarah's shadow still loomed, wasn't exactly appealing. College life was everything I'd hoped for and more. It was during my second year that I met him. Jason. He was a few years older, working on his master's in business. We bumped into each other at a campus coffee shop. Quite literally, I spilled my latte all over his shirt. We got to talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. Jason was funny, smart, and actually listened when I talked about my designs. We started dating soon after. As graduation approached, Jason and I talked about our future. We'd been together for over 2 years by then, and things were getting serious. "I've got a job lined up here in the city," he told me one night over dinner. "What do you think about staying here? Maybe, together?" My heart soared at the idea. I'd landed a position as a junior designer at an up-and-coming fashion company, and the thought of building a life with Jason away from all the family drama was incredibly tempting. But I knew I had to tell my parents face to face. So, we planned a trip back to my hometown. I was nervous about introducing Jason to my family, especially since I knew Sarah would be there too. To my surprise, the visit went better than I could have hoped. Mom and Dad loved Jason, and even Sarah was, well, not exactly warm, but at least civil. She didn't make any snide comments or try to undermine me, which was a first. Over dinner, I broke the news about my job and my plans to stay in the city. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, but I could see a hint of disappointment in her eyes. Dad cleared his throat. "Actually, we had an idea we wanted to run by you. What if you opened a branch of our company in your city? You could be in charge of design, create your own line." I was stunned. It was a generous offer, one that would allow me to pursue my dreams while still being part of the family business. "Can I think about it?" I asked. They agreed, and the rest of the visit passed pleasantly. As Jason and I were leaving, Sarah pulled me aside. "Hey, I know things haven't always been great between us," she said, looking uncomfortable. "But I'd like to try and change that. Maybe I could visit you sometime?" I was skeptical, but nodded. "Sure, that'd be nice." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm after Jason and I returned from my hometown. I threw myself into my new job, learning the ropes and impressing my bosses with my designs. Jason and I started talking about marriage, looking at apartments, dreaming of our future together. Everything seemed perfect. Then, about 3 months after our visit home, I got a surprise call from Sarah. "Hey, little sis," she said, sounding oddly cheerful. "I'm in town. Mind if I crash at your place for a bit?" I nearly dropped the phone in shock. Sarah, voluntarily coming to see me? It seemed too good to be true. But I remembered her olive branch from our last meeting and decided to give her a chance. When Sarah arrived, I barely recognized her. Gone was the scowling, resentful girl I'd grown up with. This Sarah was all smiles and hugs. Over dinner that first night, she dropped a bomb on me. "I've been thinking," she said, twirling pasta on her fork. "Why don't you come back home? We could work together at the family business. It'd be great." I nearly choked on my wine. "What? But I just started my job here. And Jason?" Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "Bring him along. There's plenty of opportunity back home." I shook my head. "Thanks, but no. Actually, Mom and Dad suggested I open a branch here. I'm still considering it." For a moment, I saw a flash of the old Sarah, a tightening around her eyes, a slight downturn of her mouth. But it passed so quickly, I thought I might have imagined it. "Well, if you won't come home, maybe I could stay here a while longer?" she asked. "We've got so much catching up to do." Against my better judgment, I agreed. And to my surprise, living with Sarah wasn't the nightmare I'd expected. She was helpful, even taking over most of the household chores. We'd stay up late, talking about our childhood, laughing over shared memories. It felt like I was finally getting the sister I'd always wanted. One night, over a bottle of wine, Sarah brought up the idea of us working together again. "What if we opened that branch together?" she suggested. "You handle the design, I'll do the business side. We'd make a great team." The idea was tempting. Despite our rocky past, Sarah and I had been getting along so well. And having her business acumen could really help get the new branch off the ground. "Let me think about it," I said, not wanting to commit just yet. As the weeks passed, Jason started coming over more often. At first, I was nervous about how he and Sarah would get along, given our history. But to my relief, they seemed to hit it off. I'd come home from work to find them laughing over inside jokes, or deep in discussion about some business concept. It warmed my heart to see two important people in my life getting along so well. Jason and I set a date for our wedding, just 6 months away. I designed the invitations, carefully curated the guest list, and agonized over every detail of the menu and decorations. Sarah was there every step of the way, offering suggestions and support. Meanwhile, Jason and I had decided to open the branch of my family's company after the wedding. Sarah and I spent many evenings discussing our plans, getting more excited with each conversation. "We're going to make an amazing team," Sarah said one night, clinking her wine glass against mine. 2 months before the big day, I was juggling work, wedding prep, and future business plans. Life was hectic, but wonderful. Then came the call that changed everything. "Laura, it's Dad," his voice sounded strained over the phone. "Your mother, she's not well. She's been feeling poorly for a while, but you know your mother, always putting on a brave face." He paused, and I could hear the worry in his silence. "I'm struggling to keep up with everything, the business, the house." I didn't hesitate. "I'm coming home. Right now." When I told Sarah, she sighed. "I wish I could come with you, but I've got some important meetings I can't reschedule." I was surprised by her reluctance, but didn't push it. "It's okay. I'll keep you updated." The situation at home was worse than I'd imagined. Mom looked pale and fragile, nothing like the vibrant woman I remembered. The doctor's diagnosis was devastating, a tumor, requiring immediate surgery. I threw myself into action, taking over household chores, helping Dad with the business where I could, and most importantly, being there for Mom. I arranged to work remotely, squeezing in design work between hospital visits and home care. The days blurred together in a haze of worry and exhaustion. But finally, there was good news: the surgery was successful, and Mom was recovering well. Through it all, I tried to stay connected with Jason. We'd video chat daily at first, his face a comforting presence on my screen. "How's your mom doing?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed with concern. "Better today," I'd reply, forcing a smile. "How are things there? Is Sarah behaving herself?" He'd laugh and assure me everything was fine, but as the days passed, our conversations grew shorter and less frequent. I told myself it was just the stress of the situation, that things would go back to normal once I returned home. But a month into my stay, the video calls stopped altogether. My messages went unanswered. The silence was deafening. The gnawing worry in my gut wouldn't let up. After days of unanswered calls and messages, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see Jason, to find out what was going on. I caught the next flight out, my mind racing with possibilities. Maybe Jason was sick. Maybe he'd lost his phone. Maybe. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Some part of me wanted to surprise Jason, to see his face light up when he saw me. The silence that greeted me in my apartment was eerie. Then I heard it, a muffled giggle from the bedroom. Our bedroom. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I didn't barge in like some crazed person. But I did. And what I saw, God, I'll never forget it. Jason and Sarah. In our bed. Naked and entwined. For a moment, the world stopped. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then reality came crashing down. "What the hell?" I screamed, my voice breaking. They jumped apart, but neither looked particularly ashamed. If anything, they looked relieved. "Laura," Sarah said, wrapping the sheet around herself. "We didn't expect you back so soon." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You didn't expect? Are you kidding me? That's all you have to say?" Jason at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Sarah stood up, still clutching the sheet. "Look, sis, these things happen. Jason and we're in love." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "In love? You've known each other for what, a few months?" "Sometimes you just know," Jason said, reaching for Sarah's hand. "We didn't mean for this to happen, but..." "But what?" I interrupted. "You just accidentally fell into bed together?" Sarah smiled sweetly. "Laura, you should be happy for us. In fact, we were hoping you'd understand. Maybe even, let us use your wedding plans?" I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What?" "Well, everything's already paid for," she explained, as if talking to a child. "It seems a shame to waste it." We could celebrate our engagement instead. I don't remember leaving the apartment. I don't remember the trip back to my parents' house. I just remember collapsing into my childhood bed, sobbing until I had no tears left. Mom and Dad found me like that. They didn't push, just sat with me until I was ready to talk. When I finally told them everything, Dad's face turned red with anger. Mom just looked sad. "I'll call her," Dad said, reaching for his phone. "This ends now." The conversation was short and brutal. I could hear Sarah's voice, shrill and defensive, through the speaker. "Of course you're taking her side," she yelled. "You always have." "Well, guess what? For once, I'm the one who got chosen." "How does it feel, Laura?" Dad's voice was cold. "Sarah, if you go through with this, you're no longer part of this family. Do you understand?" There was a pause, then Sarah's voice, dripping with venom, "Fine. I don't need you anyway. I've got Jason now." The line went dead. Mom pulled me into a hug, her still fragile body shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I clung to her, feeling like a little girl again. But I wasn't a little girl anymore. I was a woman who'd just had her heart ripped out by the two people she should have been able to trust most in the world. The days following the revelation of Sarah and Jason's betrayal passed in a blur. One moment, I'd be curled up in bed, unable to face the world. The next, I'd be researching lawyers, ready to sue them for every penny I'd spent on the wedding. It was during one of these angry research sessions that my phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" I answered warily. "Laura? It's Margaret, Jason's mother." I nearly hung up, but something in her voice stopped me. She sounded devastated. "I don't know what to say," Margaret continued. "We're so sorry, dear. So very sorry." I listened in stunned silence as she poured out her heart. How shocked and disappointed they were in Jason. How they'd always thought of me as a daughter. How they couldn't believe Sarah could do this to her own sister. "We want to make this right," Margaret said finally. "We know it won't fix everything, but we'd like to reimburse you for all the wedding expenses." True to their word, a check arrived a few days later, covering every last expense. It was a weight off my shoulders I hadn't even realized I was carrying. As the date of what would have been my wedding approached, I made a decision. I couldn't go back to the city, not yet. There were too many memories, too much pain. Would it be okay if I stayed here for a while? I asked Mom and Dad over dinner one night. Maybe work for the company? They exchanged a look, then Dad smiled. "We were hoping you'd say that. We could use your talents, especially in design." And just like that, I had a new direction. I threw myself into work with a fervor that surprised even me. Every sketch, every design, was a middle finger to Sarah and Jason. "Look what you gave up," I thought bitterly. "Look what you lost." The day of Sarah and Jason's wedding came and went. We didn't attend, of course. I spent the day locked in my office, working on a new line of youth clothing I'd been dreaming up. Months passed. My designs started gaining traction. The youth line was a hit, bringing in a whole new demographic of customers. Within a year, I'd helped increase the company's turnover by $1 million. Sarah and Jason? They were dead to me. I didn't think about them, didn't wonder what they were doing or if they were happy. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. 3 years passed in a blur of fabric swatches, design meetings, and growing success. I'd thrown myself into work, using my pain as fuel to drive our family business to new heights. Our company had become a major player in the fashion industry, and I'd made a name for myself as an innovative designer. One balmy summer evening, I was having dinner with Mom and Dad at their place. We were laughing over some silly memory when the doorbell rang. Dad frowned. "Are we expecting anyone?" I shook my head, a strange feeling of unease settling in my stomach. Mom went to answer the door, and suddenly the air was filled with a voice I hadn't heard in years. Well, look at this cozy family dinner," Sarah sneered, pushing past Mom into the dining room. "Glad to see you're all doing so well without me." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" She looked different. Haggard, angry, with dark circles under her eyes. "Oh, just thought I'd drop by, see how the other half lives," she spat. "Especially now that I'm newly single." Dad's eyes narrowed. "What happened to Jason?" Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "Turns out, once a cheater, always a cheater. He left me for his secretary." Ironic, isn't it? I felt a twinge of something, not quite sympathy, but a grim satisfaction. Karma, indeed. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, not entirely truthfully. "But why are you here?" Sarah's face hardened. "I want what's mine. My share of the business. I'm family too, remember?" Dad stood up, his voice firm. "Sarah, you gave up any claim to this family and this business when you betrayed your sister. You're not getting anything. You can't do this," Sarah screamed, her composure cracking. "You can't just cut me out." Mom stepped forward, her voice soft but resolute. "We already have, Sarah. You're disinherited. Please leave." For a moment, I thought Sarah might lash out physically. But instead, she just glared at us all, her eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," she hissed, before storming out. A few days later, I was in my office when I heard a commotion from the lobby. I rushed down to find Sarah in the middle of our workspace, screaming at the top of her lungs. "You're all being deceived," she yelled at our bewildered employees. "My parents are unscrupulous liars. They've stolen what's rightfully mine." I didn't hesitate. I called the police, keeping my voice calm despite the chaos around me. "We need officers at Fashion Forward Designs immediately. We have an unstable individual causing a disturbance." Even as security tried to remove her, Sarah kept fighting. Over the next few days, she escalated her attacks, trying to break into our parents' house, smashing windows, and in a final, terrifying act, attempting to set fire to the front door. It was clear this couldn't go on. With heavy hearts, we took legal action, obtaining a restraining order that banned Sarah from approaching me, our parents, or any of our properties. As I sat in my office after the court hearing, looking out over the city I'd come to love, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Sadness for the sister I'd lost, anger at her actions, but also pride in how far I'd come. I was now a respected entrepreneur and fashion designer, my name known throughout the industry. Love? That could wait. The wounds from Jason's betrayal had healed, but I wasn't ready to risk my heart again. Not yet. For now, I was content to pour my passion into my designs, into building something lasting and beautiful.